everyone. Welcome to today's session. We are continuing to discuss Kaufman and Hart's joint play, You Can't Take It With You. It debuted in 1936 and it was again produced in 1938, and it was also adapted into a number of other forms. And this was one of the most successful runs in Broadway. And before we proceed with the discussion, we've already taken a look at the setting of the play and some of the characters and how the tone of the play has been set. So before we proceed, we'll quickly take a look at some details about You Can't Take It With You and the reasons for its continuing relevance. So the original play, it opened in 1936 and it had a very impressive run in Broadway. It ran for 2 years for about 837 performances, and it said that the tickets were always sold out months in advance. So in 1937, it went on to win the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, and it was adapted into a screen in 1938, adapted into a film in 1938, and which also went on to win the Academy Award for the Best Picture and Best Director. So this is a kind of background, this is the kind of reception that it had in popular culture. So what is immensely important about this play is that this was perhaps the only play in the history of Broadway that a play and that this is the only time in the history of this theatrical and cinematic performance that a Broadway play and a film based on the same play ran simultaneously in the 1930s. So the reasons for this the huge success that this play reaped, we already can sense it from the kind of dialogue delivery and the kind of setting and the situational farce that this play is able to pull off. And we've already taken a look at a couple of acts, which gives us an insight into the ironical presentation, which is at the same time very fine humor. And it's very neatly weaved into the situation, and the characters are perfectly fitting into the very unconventional background, in the very unconventional setting. So, if a quick recap of the characters whom we have already met. So, there is Martin Vanderhoff. The play opens in his house, in New York, and he is the grandfather, he's the patriarch of the family. There's Penelope Sycamore, and Penelope is Martin's daughter. She writes plays. She loves to write plays, but there is no evidence of anyone getting published, in any of the plays getting published. She has been writing plays, close to 8 plays, and she started writing plays because a typewriter was accidentally delivered to their apartment. And Paul Sycamore is Penny's husband, and he enjoys manufacturing fireworks in the cellar. It's also an activity which very soon gets them into trouble. Essie is Penny's daughter. She's an aspiring ballet dancer. But again, none of these characters have any goals set in their mind. There's no destination that they need to reach. They just practice dance. They write play, never with the intention of making money or aspiring to become famous. So Ed, Essie's husband, he in the same way, he loves to play xylophone, and it's also the background, as we've already seen, it's always chaotic. There's ballet, there's playwriting, there are fireworks, and there are these different musical things, not necessarily in a very synchronized or in a harmonious way. So Mr. Deepana is a family friend, and he's a Greek discus thrower. Boris Kolenkov is Essie's ballet teacher. He's Russian, so we also have some very peripheral, cursory discussions about Russian politics and the relation between America and Russia, not necessarily in a very discursive political manner. So Reba, she's a colored maid. Donald is Reba's friend, and this combination is seen as the most eccentric. They are seen as a formidable combination which produces humor from situations. There is also an eccentricity which becomes quite unpalatable to the world outside. So in between, we find that there are a set of characters who enter this. So Alice is there. Alice is Penny's daughter. She's also a sycamore, but we find that she's more on the saner side, and she's the only one who's in touch with the world outside. She's the only one who's regular employment, who who's able to negotiate with the world outside, who also realizes that her family is very eccentric, that anyone from outside will struggle to even communicate with them. And which is why when she brings in Tony Kirby, yeah, with whom, um, with whom she has a romantic relationship. Tony Kirby is a successful businessman, and he's also the son of Alice's boss, Mr. Kirby. So we realize that there's a clear dichotomy over here with Alice functioning as a sort of a mediator. So Tony Kirby is this a young man who is almost like an idealist, despite the fact that he is inheriting his father's business, and Mr. Kirby and Mrs. Kirby, whom we shall be meeting in the scene that we will be discussing today. So again, some of the broad elements that are important to this play and which continue to be significant even in the contemporary. This is an absolute celebration of non-conformity, which is very important given that some of the ideals of 20th century, some of the tenets of 20th century that defined success, that defined material success, that defined, again, the foundations of capitalist economy, they were being founded in the early 20th century. And by the 1930s, there is this Great Depression, which happens, which challenges a lot of such notions. And this is also the time when people would want to use some kind of an escapism to at least momentarily turn away from this reality of depression, from this reality that things are perhaps not really working out well. So this is a tone that we will continue to see in some of the later plays too, in Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which is also a play that we will be reading right after this. And there also we find that this disillusionment goes really deep. It's not just and out there in the society. It gets very psychological. It gets very emotional too. So here is a play which is which focuses on providing immediate engagement rather than getting into a complex analysis. But the roots of this run really deep, and which is why the timelessness of this theme is getting celebrated over and again. The situational farce continues to be relevant even when it is taken outside of its immediate context, outside of its immediate historical context as well. So this play did have, You Can't Take It With You, had a successful Broadway revivals in 1965 as well as in 1983, which is indicative of the way in which the themes, the broad themes that this play is addressing, and also the situationality which is getting foregrounded. It's quite relatable across decades, yeah. And even in the present situation, yeah, when we read through the play, we realize that the humor is very striking. There's something very relatable, very they're able to connect with the sentiments of the characters. So there are these two families who are placed on either side of the spectrum. They have very different approaches to life. Their philosophy towards life is very different. It's antithetical to each other. On the one hand, there are these Sycamores, the Vanderhoff Sycamore family, whose approach to life, whose even responses to the normal routine circumstances, it's seen as very odd as per society's standards. And what makes this play very admirable, what makes the characterization and the setting extremely admirable, is the fact that even in the current circumstance, even from the point of view of the 21st century, it does look odd. There's a family who is engaging in a number of things which are not really acceptable as per any society's standards. There's a family, where they are, they have snakes. There is a snake solarium and not an aquarium with fish, yeah. And no one really goes to work. They are just doing things which will bring them personal fulfillment. And there's a patriarch who takes pride in the fact that he's not paying taxes. And this is not to evade taxes. It is not to challenge the law, but he's simply not convinced that the government is giving him anything in return for what he is doing. And here's a man, there are all of them. We get to know the Vanderhoff, the patriarch, Martin Vanderhoff, the grandpa. He had quit his job, his business, 35 years ago, because he realized that if he continues with it, he will not have time to enjoy the smaller pleasures of life. And there is Penny's father, who also realizes that, perhaps, who also had given up halfway through and never became an architect, but instead chose to pursue his what according to him was giving him personal fulfillment and happiness. And here is a family who's not afraid of um, say they're not afraid of pursuing their dreams, and they are also quite confident. They're also quite confident about the kind of fierce individualistic stances that they have taken. And Alice, perhaps, she's always caught in this dilemma, but she does not fail to see the nobility in the choices that her family has made. Of course, there are certain moments when, especially when things go entirely wrong during their interaction with Kirby's, which is understandably so too. But despite that, she entirely understands. She's entirely able to comprehend and analyze the point of view from where the Vanderhoff Sycamore family comes. And of course, she is perhaps not, able to pursue that with the same sort of force and passion that the rest of her family does. But there is an ability. She arrives at this point when she, as well as Tony Kirby later on, they're able to strike a balance, about defining this American dream, redefining the notion of American dream. So, in complete antithetical existence to the Sycamores, we have the Kirbys, who embody the American dream, who are these perfect examples of how to live the American dream, how to sustain the American dream, and achieve material success as well as fame. So, but it's another thing that it comes at the cost of happiness and passion. So what also strikes is very interesting at the end of the play is that this is not a play which is trying to overwrite capitalism. It is not rejecting capitalism as a blanket thing, but it's trying to foreground the fact that there should be a balance between this pursuit of material success and how that pursuit should not compromise, should not be at the cost of the happiness and individual passions. So these are, again, some of the details that we will see getting foregrounded when we get back to closely reading the play. So let's also spend some time to talk about the notion of the American dream and how that is being unpacked in this play, not in a very philosophical sense, in very, very raw terms. So again, this is not a play which would lend itself to a lot of theoretical readings. It is actually, does not try to make the situation complex. It's there to, ease the tension. And obviously, it has worked well almost, throughout the century. That's how, that's what we get to know from the many the adaptations and the revivals that the play has seen. So it has not entirely been critical of the American dream, the notion of the American dream, but it's also trying to foreground an alternate worldview, which should also ideally fit within the notion of the American dream. So this is a play which celebrates different perceptions and definitions of the American dream. And non-conformity of the Sycamore family is a perfect entry point into this discourse. So it's also, Martin Vanderhoff, towards the end of the play, the brief advice that he gives to the Kirbys, it also showcases this possibility of having multiple ways to self-fulfillment and happiness. There are, of course, a set of people who are made to fit into a Wall Street kind of life. But it's also important to know whether this is a kind of life with, a kind of choice which will leave you with little regrets towards the end of one's life, because that is the one theme. That is one theme which is encapsulated in the title itself. You can't take it with you. At the end of it all, there's none of this, the material success, the fame, and whatever you have achieved by sacrificing your dreams and your ambitions, none of this could be taken with you. So with the pointlessness of it all. But this pointlessness, it is not nihilistic in any way either. It is not a rejection of the self. It is not a rejection of reality. On the other hand, it is this deliberate choice of, trying to lead life according to one's own desires. And this does not come in the, come at the cost of harming others. There are certain choices. These are the kind of choices. And here we find that, this entire family is able to make this choice, making the family space a very happy and very fulfilling space in spite of, the kind of things that they together land into, even including, that as we will see in the final act, they even end up in jail, and of course, they get out of it too. So this is doing what one loves seems to be the central philosophy that's being foregrounded in this play. And this kind of love, doing what one loves, the act of the doing aspect, or the aspect of passion, it need not fit into the standards already set by the society. If you look at them, they are all doing something or the other. It's not necessarily productive, quote unquote productive. Again, let me draw your attention to Virginia Woolf's short story Solid Objects, which explores a similar theme in a British setting, in a British political setting. Yeah, that short fiction Solid Objects is also about the making the right kind of choices, and how those choices are sometimes seen as sometimes delegitimized because they're not productive choices. Yeah, so it's about as I mentioned before, it's about a character going after solid objects because those objects suddenly begin to fascinate him. He begins to have an obsession with those objects, and he begins to collect them from the roadside, from the seaside, yeah, from almost everywhere. So he becomes, he's getting, in the eyes of his friends and in the eyes of the society, he's just thrown away a career, a brilliant career, promising career in politics, and he's just picking up stones and picking up rags, which does not make any sense to the does not make any sense to to the world outside. This also needs to be contrasted with certain kinds of fashionable hobbies that people take up, certain kind of rewarding hobbies, materially rewarding hobbies that people take up. So we ultimately, one understands that it is not entirely about doing something useful. It's also about fitting into certain templates, which is very clearly shown in this play as well, where the Kirbys, they have certain fashionable hobbies too. One, raising orchids, which is it's a very, very expensive hobby. And Mrs. Kirby is into spiritualism, which is dismissed as a fad by Penny. And of course, even Alice realizes Mrs. Kirby is pursuing spiritualism because that seems to be the in thing to do. That's a statement. All of these pursuits are a statement of one's identity. It's a statement to fit into something, which is where this family, the Sycamore family, comes across as being very different because they are doing these things, playing xylophone or writing plays or manufacturing firecrackers or staying fascinated with the printing press. They're not doing it for anything per se. And that becomes an activity. That becomes something. It's doing something without a destination, without a particular goal, without aspiring to make money or get fame. That does not have a place in the modern economic system, in the modern, way in which systems have been formulated. So, on the one hand, we have these dominant discourses about productivity, what kind of work one should do in order to give back something to the nation, in order to get the system going. And on the other hand, you have a set of people who have the courage, and sometimes maybe one could afford to do that too, about following one's dream or desire. And yeah, it is possible to see this play as a comical attack on capitalism. And this, in fact, this play then and much later too, it had prompted an evaluation of the American dream, where this balance becomes important to include both material success as well as personal fulfillment, which comes out in various forms. Though the play does not get into a philosophical discussion of it, but it gets foregrounded. It gets articulated in various forms throughout this play. So, for instance, this statement that Grandpa Vanderhoff makes about Kirby, the Tony Kirby. Tony is too nice a boy to wake up 20 years from now with nothing in his life but stocks and bonds. It's a very radical view about Wall Street, and it also, sums up his philosophy, sums up the argument of the play in so many ways. Again, it's important here to notice that the play does not reject what comes out of Wall Street. Play does not reject the capitalist philosophy altogether. It is all about understanding the kind of individual that each one is and the choices that one is capable of making. So all of them, all these characters, they made a choice at some point in their life, to pursue what they want to do. And that choice is the factor which gets highlighted over here. So when we begin to look at the sum total of the themes which are woven into this play, despite the situational far and the comic dialogues and the many eccentric things in it, it encourages us to talk about wealth, about economy in slightly different ways. And it foregrounds this aspect, the philosophy that one should be doing what one loves, but not in a very nihilistic, hedonistic sense either. It also blurs this line between success and failure. It shows that there is no single definition, but it's a very individualized, personalized choice. And the individualism that we see over here, it's about a rugged kind of individualism. All of those characters, from Martin van Hoftel, his daughter and sons-in-law, they all come across as such people. Even the Kolenkov, who is the Russian, the ballet dancer, the ballet dance teacher, and Olga, the former duchess, they all are fierce and rugged individualists who just keep doing what they like doing without regretting, without thinking about how things could have been better if the political circumstance or the economic circumstances were different. Yeah, if you look at the American characters here, they're going through this very stark, depressing phase of economic depression. And if you look at those Russian characters who come more or less, who accentuate the comic element over here, they are also not lamenting the change in the political situation in a very apolitical way. That's a critique that we will not get into at the moment. In a very apolitical way, they are also trying to make most of the situation and trying to do what one's heart desires to do, despite the a million other things going wrong. So this family space, the home space, is very important over here. It also challenges the notion of privacy, which modernity was also trying to, bringing the notions of private and the public. We find that it's getting increasingly challenged in the space of this family, which the Van der Hoff family perfectly represents. There's no clear division between the activities over there. There's no clear division between what could be discussed and what could not be discussed. So there's a certain political incorrectness about this entire play, which also makes it very endearing. And this political incorrectness also, takes one to the core of some of the issues that this play is dealing with. Yeah, for instance, the little game that they have when the Kirbys are visiting. Yeah, it's only by staying politically incorrect that they are able to some of the uncomfortable secrets, some of the uncomfortable discussions also get foregrounded, though in very inadvertent ways. So it's largely about celebrating difference regardless of the many external superficial differences which would be there. So this family, the Van der Hoff Sycamore family, they are eccentric. They they have snakes at home, and they have firecrackers at home. So, and they could be seen as very odd, yeah, very eccentric, very difficult to deal with. But from the Sycamore's point of view, yeah, they welcome everyone. Yeah, they do accept that people are different, and they do not expect people to, just blend in. Yeah, for instance, when the Kirbys come in, when the Mrs. Kirby gets obviously scared of the snakes over there, they do remove it from the living room, and they take the solarium uh, to the kitchen. So they are accommodating. They do understand that they don't expect the rest of the world to blend in, but they are open to accommodating. They are open to celebrating this difference, yeah, which makes this play all the more a very welcoming change during the 1930s. So finally, I'll leave you with this point about the the political correctness of the play, which also has been discussed in some context. So there is a characterization of the African Americans which could be seen as politically incorrect in terms of their representation, Reba and Donald. But it was also, they're staying true to the time and the economic conditions of those times, and the way in which, the Reba is being made part of the family. There's a certain inclusiveness about it, just the way Kolenkov and later, the former Duchess, Russian Duchess Olga. Yeah, there is a way in which a very utopian kind of inclusiveness is being celebrated without getting, without really spelling it out. Yeah, so the political correctness the political incorrectness in some of the representations, which were pointed out at a much later time in the play, at a much later time in history. Yeah, that also needs to be addressed. Given that the time also allowed these sort of representations, and it's also staying true to the conditions which of those times. Yeah, so we will perhaps wrap up today's discussion with this and come back to take a closer look at the rest of the play in the next session. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session.